Hello, welcome. And finally, we are back to a new video for you. So sorry for a little bit of delay, but we are going to get to our last theory of leadership on the few more theories. So last time we went through servant, and you have an activity, hopefully using the model of servant leadership. Questions about that, please feel free to email me. And we ended with the strengths and criticisms. So the last one, also not necessarily talked about in your text, so there is an article under course documents on authentic leadership. That's the one to check and read. And this is the very newest of all the leadership theories. As a matter of fact, it's really still developing. Not a lot of research on it yet. It's something I'm doing some research on because I'm very interested in it. And authentic leadership is exactly what it says. It focuses on the authenticity of leadership. This is hard to explain because what it means, and one of the reasons I definitely wanted to do a little in-base video today, is because it's a request for leaders who are real, who are genuine, who are going to tell us the truth. And interestingly enough, in this last election cycle, a lot of people said Donald Trump is authentic. He says what he means. And that is a certain type of authenticity, but it's really not what authentic leadership is going after. Because I'm not sure that Trump, yes, he says what he means, but that being authentic doesn't give you like a carte blanche just to say whatever you want or whatever you feel. But it does say, I can be real with you. I can say, you know what? It was a long time teaching in China. It was a lot of work. I took a little break this weekend, and I didn't get everything up as quickly as I wanted to. There you have it. It's real. It's genuine. It's being who you are and letting other people see that. This is very different in some regards from transformational leadership. Well, authentic leadership stems from transformational leadership. The big difference here is transformational leaders are always inspiring. So if you were to see me and I was transformational, I would always be inspiring. I wouldn't let you see those days where I'm having a bad day or I have my own doubts or, I admit that that didn't go so well. I think a transformational leader almost always still has some kind of mask on that's saying, I'm here promoting and inspiring. If you look at the movie we watched and Coach Boone, he was very much transformational. He really only let his closest wife and maybe his one coach see any type of doubt in him. And that was very little. And so authentic leadership is something we really want right now because I think many people are sick of leaders who are lying or trying to be someone they're not. So this is a very timely type of leadership to study because I really think it's what your generation is calling for, some more authentic people. And I think one of the people we're seeing is AOC, as she is affectionately called, who knows her values and has come across as a pretty authentic young woman in Congress. So we'll talk a little bit more about some other examples of where we're seeing authentic leadership, but we'll find out a little bit more about it. So there are 3 approaches to becoming an authentic leader. And this whole approach is really focused now back on the leader. So we just got finished with servant, which was pretty much all about the followers. We're really coming back to the leader now. The leader has to develop all 3 of these. And it starts with a very intrapersonal perspective. And this is the leader knowing their values, knowing their strengths, knowing their weaknesses. You've done a lot of self-assessments in here. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why. Because when push comes to shove, or when something is a very difficult decision, are you going to be consistent? Are you always going to stand up for the same values, or do you shift? And I think this is a problem we're seeing in a lot of our political leadership, where people shift depending on what's good for them, or they make different decisions depending on who's pressuring them. And I think if you're authentic, you say, no, I'm always going to stand up for family, or I'm always going to value X. You rank ordered those values. And one of the reasons we took a look at that was because I want you to think about, what is it you value? What is it that you will get out on the balcony, so to speak? What issue would you take on or tackle, and always tackle? Because what happens, what we see in politics, is people will say, yes, I'm for family. And then when the pressure comes, they get a bill and they vote against some issue that would hurt family. So, I think to be authentic, you always have to know who you are, know what you're going to do, and be consistent. I've gotten to the point with students that I feel like I know who I am. I know what's going to happen in all kinds of different situations and what I value. And that leads all of my actions. And hopefully they're not contradictory. Once I have a good interpersonal perspective, I can become or start to become an authentic leader. But then I have to start by creating those relationships with my followers, genuine relationships. And I think, it's naive to think our relationships are going to be happy 24/7. And if you have been in any kind of relationship, you probably know that. Everyone ebbs and flows. And I think what we are asking from our leaders is show us a real relationship. It doesn't mean you should create problems where there aren't problems, but when there are, you talk to people. You don't let them fester. You integrate your values and who you are, and you make more caring relationships. And that's a perspective there. And the developmental perspective. Why are we doing this in the first place? Hopefully because we want to nurture not only the leader and help them grow, but we want to nurture our followers, I think, is how I look at it. So again, for me, my whole career has been spent in education, so I tend to use it a lot as an example. But certainly I've gotten to a point where hopefully I'm being authentic with you as students. I am trying to build meaningful relationships. I do not like online courses. I'll be the first one to say it. I know y'all love them, but I would rather meet you and talk with you and have you in class every day, because that's just how we make more meaningful relationships. And that means that I can help you learn better. That's that nurture part. How do I help you learn? How do I help better prepare you for the job market? And one of the ways, speaking of which, is an assignment we're going to be talking about, because we've been going through all these theories of leadership, and I'm hoping that you have found one or even two that you say, I really like the way this style of theory looks at leadership, because I want to nurture you into a philosophy of leadership. So we're going to be talking about that leadership philosophy paper that's coming up a little bit later. All right. There are two different parts here. We're going to go back and look at the developmental perspective. And this is basically how leaders should process relationships with their followers, as well as, I think, decision making. So this is all under that third rung of the developmental perspective. And if you are truly developing people, guess what? Self-awareness comes back at you. And you're going to get another lecture right after this one on emotional intelligence. All of this is saying over and over again, you have to know who you are. You have to know where to draw your values and your lines and be consistent. I cannot express how important this will be someday, because people are going to come to you. And I've seen organizations that I've consulted for have distress over these kinds of decisions, where a mother wants to leave early because she wants to go to her son's soccer game. Does the boss let her? Well, one of the companies I consulted for, the boss said, no, nobody else gets to go to their kid's soccer game. We work 8 to 5. That's it. And I applaud the boss if that's consistent. But guess what? Some other people have been given time to leave early to go to an event for their child. So what begins to happen is people become very disgruntled. It's the same way again. I'll go back to the student. What if a student comes to me and says, "Can I get some extra credit? I'm struggling." And I say, "Sure, no problem." Yeah, you guys are going to go ballistic on me. Well, you gave her extra credit and you didn't give me extra credit, and this person got more time, but I didn't. And it becomes very difficult. Because whatever you do, you have to be fair and consistent. You have to have a very good self-awareness and also that internalized moral perspective. What is right? What is wrong? What is fair? We're going to be talking about ethics very soon here. And this is going to become a paramount issue, I believe, in leadership. Because when do I decide who gets extra credit or doesn't get extra credit? My lights just went out in the office, but hopefully you can still see me. We also talk about at this point balance processing, that I'm able to see all sides of the issues. I'm not really sure what's going on in society right now, but I can only tell you the amount of emails I get from students. You have a ton of crises, I think, or you're really good storytellers. I'm trying to process that from all sides and realize I've got stuff that happens in my life that distracts me from doing things. You have things in your life beyond this online course that distract you from doing things. But I have to look at and balance what's fair, what's not fair. One of the ones I've been struggling with is people contacting me 3 or 4 days after an exam saying something came up, can I retake the exam? This is a hard one. I actually, maybe I'll make this your extra credit activity for today. What would you do? 3 or 4 days, the exam's already passed. This is an online course. I think I post enough information and reminders that you know when the next exam is coming up. Thursday, August 1st, exam 2, by the way. So think about that. From my perspective, it's 3 or 4 days now. I haven't heard from you at all, and I don't know what happened. We'll come back to that. And I'm transparent. I say, hey, look, here's the way it is. I don't try to BS you. I don't try to make it sound like I'm reading you the corporate statement instead. And I can even sit here and say, I don't agree with that, but here's what we have to deal with. It's a sense of all of these if we're going to develop people into responsible, transparent, authentic leaders. Okay, 2 approaches to this. There is Robert Terry's Authentic Action Wheel and Bill George's Authentic Characteristic Wheel. And I don't like that Terry calls his the Authentic Action Wheel, because not really all that much of a wheel, and George's is more of a wheel, but we'll get there. The action wheel, the word action in there is very important, because Terry's approach looks more at the process a leader would go through, the things a leader would consider if they were being authentic. And I think it takes a little bit more of a business process approach, where Bill George gives you characteristics of how to, of what to embody as the leader. So it's much more leader personally focused, where the action wheel looks again more at process. And as soon as you see both of them, you're going to understand that. So here is authentic action. And this is again more the idea that this is what you need to do when developing and dealing with followers. You go back to your guiding values, principles, and ethics. I'm going to argue that for authentic in both. It is a very moral-based, ethical way of doing leadership because, again, you take a stand. One of the reasons I mentioned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was because she's impressed me. Someone was heckling Republicans, a Democrat, and she's a Democrat. Some say a socialist, but maybe a communist, whatever you want your take on that to be. I think she's a Democrat, and a Democrat was bad-mouthing a Republican, and she stopped and called that person out and said, hey, we don't do that. And I was very, very impressed, because if her value says, my ethics are, we don't bad-talk anyone. I don't care which side of the party line they're on, and I'm going to stand up for it. And I thought, okay, that's authentic leadership. It says, I'm not going to just play the line when everything is good. If you're acting in a way that isn't ethical or irresponsible, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Socialist, Green Party, or what. I'm going to call you out on it. And I kind of feel the same way even as a teacher. If you're not doing something right, I'm going to call you out on it. It doesn't matter if you're my, kid, or my kid doesn't go to college. Don't worry. He's not in any of our classes. But it's this idea that we stick to those principles. It's the only way we can be authentic. Those principles then are driven by what is our mission or our desires or objectives. For me, it's always learning. I know it's not for you, but my mission, my objective is to learn. So hopefully I can reflect back and look at my energy, my motivation, and I try to do everything I possibly can to open up learning to you. What are the structures I have to work within? Actually, a lot of the structures and systems, policies, and procedures make learning very difficult. So I've made it kind of my mission to fight back on some of those and say, we're making it harder for students to do things like study abroad. Oh my goodness, there's so much you have to do. It's not necessary. Okay, I'm getting a little long-winded. What are the resources? I think this is the hardest one for me because I don't have resources. If I really wanted to go back to my values and my mission, I would say learning is at the top, which means one thing to me: smaller classes. I cannot build relationships with 200 people in a class. And I really can't build relationships with 100 people online. So I think we need more resources. I think we need more money, smaller class sizes. And these are all things that I am fighting for myself. And Terry says you still also have to look at the history. Our department actually has a very rich history that we can pull from that can help influence some of those guiding values, principles, and ethics. If we want to look to politics, you know what? Our country has a pretty good constitution that also guides our values, principles, and ethics. So that's how we get to fulfillment, but we have to consider all of these issues as an authentic leader. So that's Terry's action wheel. I'm a little bit bigger fan of George's, but again, I think they both point to the same way. And you'll still see some stuff in here that makes sense. You still have to have a purpose. You have to have a passion. If I had you during the regular semester, we would watch a YouTube video by Simon Sinek that talks about all of you want your purpose in life. What is your purpose and your passion? That's something you have to discover. And I didn't discover mine as an undergrad. I'll be authentic and real with you right now. I graduated as an undergrad and I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? Because I still had no clue. I did not find my purpose or passion till later. So it is difficult, but I did find it. You have to have a set of values. I've talked a lot about values. I had you rank those values because I really believe, yes, all those values are important, but when we have conflict between the two, we make choices. I'll give you a really good instance. I just booked another trip. Oops. And it happens to fall on Christmas and New Year's. Eek! I would probably rank an exciting life over family because, well, yeah, come on, we're my exciting life people. You understand me out there. You'll get this one. I already broke it to my parents that I will not be around for Christmas. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to need to go visit them for Thanksgiving, but we'll see what exciting opportunities come instead. Again, look at how important relationships and connectedness. This entire course from chapter 1, we've been talking about relationships. Not necessarily task, but relationships. Then we see it one more time: self-discipline and consistency. I cannot tell you, if you are in a leadership position, this is going to be paramount. And it's difficult. It's difficult to have self-discipline and consistency and still have compassion and heart. And again, I deal with this every day. Some of you, it wasn't, I just didn't set my alarm. Some of you have maybe had a parent pass away. I can't imagine dealing with that. So I have to have compassion and heart, certainly, but I also still have to be fair. And it's difficult, folks. It really, really is. And I used to lead a little more with compassion and heart. And then I think I told you, or maybe some of you have heard the story about the girl who lied about her father dying and he didn't really die. And I was like, ugh, because compassion and heart, sometimes my heart just wants to go out to all of you. And that's not the best thing as a leader. Yes, I want to be compassionate and have a heart. And I think that I do. But I'm a leader. And I still have to always be setting that example and behaving in a way that supports what I believe. So those are George's characteristics. And I really think they speak to what it means to be authentic as a person. These are some positive psychological characteristics that also are talked about in the article. I think that, again, they go along with being authentic. You have to have some confidence. I think authentic leadership is also something we develop more as we get older. And I say that simply because most of you are still trying to figure out what I just said. What is your purpose? What is your passion? What do you value the most? And I've made a lot of mistakes along the way trying to figure that out, or made some bad decisions and I shouldn't have done it. But, I've found more. I've become more confident in who I am and my ability to lead. I do have a lot of hope and optimism. As I said to my class in China, are you a half empty or half full kind of person? And remember, we talked about that. And so certainly I think always. And when you work in a very bureaucratic structure like higher education, it can be difficult to keep hope and optimism alive. And I think you need self-care. You need breaks sometimes from that. So these are things we can also pull over into servant leadership. And resilience. Because if you just get down so easily and give up, you're never going to have confidence, hope, or optimism. And I see that a little bit in the generation we're dealing with. If I don't like this job, I'll just go get a new one. And I'm preaching hard to say you need to stick with one job for a year. And you've probably changed jobs and it was better for a while and then problems cropped up. We really have to be careful because we always think the grass is greener on the other side, so to speak. And every job, every leader, every boss is going to have some issues. And you have to decide which ones am I willing to deal with and which ones am I not. And have some resilience to deal with things you don't want to. And keep hope and optimism. So, strengths and weaknesses, because I've gotten a little lengthy today, but I really like this kind of leadership. I think authentic leadership is the way we want our leaders to be heading into the future. So, it fulfills a need for trustworthy leadership. We want trustworthy leadership. I think we're kind of tired of the lines and the promises and the rah-rah inspiration. It does provide some specific guidelines. It has a very moral dimension, and I think anyone can develop authenticity if they look within themselves and know their values, their purpose, and have those characteristics George talked about. What we don't know about authentic leadership yet is, does it work? Somebody please tell me, because I want to know. So I'm trying it out. I've been trying it out for a little while in the classroom. Does it result in a positive experience? We don't really know yet, and that's actually something my research is looking into. If I'm authentic with you, does that result in a more positive outcome? And I'm not sure yet, because there are times I feel like I shouldn't admit to you, oh, hey, I'm not really into this today, or I'm down today too, because I don't think you're resilient enough to handle that. So what I'm saying is, if I don't bring it every single day, you're not resilient enough to bring it yourselves when I don't have it. Kind of sounds a little backwards. It's not necessarily, it's just kind of one of those things where maybe I should not admit, because then people will say, the teacher didn't want to be there, we didn't either. and you write these things to me. So, but I still believe it's better than putting on a mask and pretending everything's okay when it's not. I guess I would still rather be real than not, even though we don't know whether or not that's totally effective for followers. So this is the last major theory I am going to throw at you. You've got a bunch, and we're going to be talking now, shifting focus a little bit to some other topics once again, looking at ethics, women, organization, crisis, and going from there. So there is no video for emotional intelligence, but that lesson is next, and you can take a look at it. I am not going to give you, well, gosh, I still want to, I might throw another little discussion at you. I'll post it because I want to know your answer. Do you remember the answer? The question, the student missed the exam, emails me 4 days later. Something came up. I couldn't get to it. What do? I need to know. I get that email every single time. All right, guys. Bye.